Okay.
Okay, what we're going to show today is the Graco FinishPro 395, some simple maintenance procedures, and some troubleshooting. As far as the maintenance procedures, what we want to show first is some of the filters we need to replace or clean periodically. The first being the manifold filter. This manifold filter is hand tightened. After you use the pump for a while, you probably have to take a wrench onto the top of this. It does have some wrench flats, and you want to remove this filter. Clean this filter. The material we're using through this is waterborne, so it can be cleaned with just soap and water. This manifold filter, the paint comes through here. The material comes through this manifold filter and filters out any of the dirt and any of the dust and sawdust and anything else that gets into your paint, into your material. It filters that before it comes out into the gun. Okay, moving on to the second filter is the gun filter. Of course, the gun's off of the hose for illustrative purposes. There's a small filter in the fluid entrance to this gun. Again, it's wrench flats. You want to clean this, I would say weekly at least. And it's a small tip filter basically. And it does come out of there. .60 mesh tip filter. Again, it can be flushed with water, flush through one end, or just clean out the material that gets trapped on the outside of this filter. That should be done at least weekly. And again, that keeps the sawdust or any debris or anything that falls into your paint, gets through the manifold filter and ends up near your gun. So you have a double filtration system really on the material once it gets into the pump and once it starts to make its way to the tip. Third filter is a air compressor filter. This is a self-contained unit. It's an airless pump with a self-contained compressor. And there's an air filter on this compressor, and from in the shop you're going to get some kind of buildup either of the material you're spraying or just the dust in general in the shop. Quarter inch, 4 screws that hold this on. It's back plate. We just did 2 of them here just for speed. Take this back plate off. And at the bottom of the unit there's a plastic filter, an air filter. This is a replaceable item. Just a simple filter. And again, this is going to pick up a lot of the dirt and the dust in the shop as well as the material that you're spraying. That's going to save the air compressor, and that just threads into the fitting. And again, this is a maintenance part or a replaceable part. Simple as that. Make sure you put this plate on the back as well to protect your air compressor. And for brevity, we'll probably just put 2 screws on. Roll. There's a few items here. If you are experiencing difficulty in getting the material to spray or getting the material from the bucket into the pump, as far as siphoning the material, or when you are priming the pump. In other words, if it's not getting material up into the pump, there's several things that you can troubleshoot very simply in the field without a great deal of time or maintenance. First of all, you want to make sure that this siphon tube is out of the way. You want to make sure that there's two balls. This is considered a positive displacement pump, meaning that it's going to pump on the upstroke and the downstroke, which means there's two balls in there, two check balls. Those check balls, because of the nature of the material, the urethane material, being somewhat sticky, when you flush this out, the water and that resin kind of combines and makes I'd say a little sticky substance that could cause the balls to stick when it's not in use for a while. So what you want to do is simply take the lower assembly off and check this lower ball first. This is done in the field with a mallet or a hammer. This knurled ring here, hit it with the hammer. It should come right off with hands. Now inside here are three components. There's a ball seat, it's a check ball, and a ball cage. So it's going to retain that ball into that area. You want to take these out and clean them. Make sure they're not sticking. If this ball sticks, it's not going to siphon material up into the pump. You want to make sure that you don't misplace or to replace the ball seat. The ball seat goes in first, then the check ball, and the ball cage. The ball fits into the bottom of the cage. Just gets dropped in there. If this is clean or not sticking, the second thing would be there's a ball inside the lower assembly, and that's our upper ball. In which case you have to take the upper assembly or the lower assembly, the lower assembly out of the unit. Even though it may look like it's a little more involved, it's pretty simple. You can do it with just simple hand tools. So putting this aside, and again, not losing those parts, I'm going to take the front piece off. This is the piece that carries your bucket. It also protects the connection to the pump. Again, this is a 1/4-inch socket or nut driver. Or a straight slot screw. We had it loose. Now once again, to illustrate, this is the connection to the upper, or for the lower assembly. This is the actual pump part of the pump. This is what brings the paint into from the bucket to your paint gun. There's a pin up here, and if you can see that, you may have to bring the camera a little closer. And I think what action. What you want to do is remove that wire retainer. You may need a punch to get that out, but because this is a new unit, I can probably get it out with just a screwdriver. It's going to fall into the back here. Hold it. All right. Again, we're going to try to take this thing apart so we can get to the upper ball. There's a pin that holds the piston and everything together here. So we have to take that pin out. We want to pull this spring up. This is a retainer spring. And there's a pin right here that we need to remove. And because this is new, we're going to probably be able to push that right out. Now, in order to get that pin in the right position, you may have to cycle this pump to the bottom of its stroke, which when you turn this on, you'll be able to see this. This thing will bottom out and go back up, bottom out and go back up. When it's at the lowest part of its stroke is the easiest way to put take the pin out of there. And it's going to drop into this area back here, so you're not going to lose that pin. It's back there. You may have to get your fingers back in there to get it out, but it is there. So now we have that pin out. We want to take this, there's a ring right here that's going to hold this lower assembly up against the unit itself. We want to get this loose. Again, just a hammer. We usually knock that loose. And you have to put a screwdriver on it. There we go. No, it does come loose. There's a knurled ring here that holds this lower assembly up against the casing of the pump. You're going to have to knock this loose with probably a metal hammer. These are pretty tight. So again, I did loosen it already, but you want to knock that thing loose. Bottom this out on your lower assembly. Now this should be able to turn and it will come right out. The pin's out of the connecting rod. The connecting rod is out of the assembly here with the pin. We knock that out. We knock this loose, and this should go. Before we turn this out, we want to unhook the hose that's connected to the back. This is the hose that goes into your paint hose or into your filter assembly. So this you want to make sure you get unhooked. Now the lower assembly should be able to freely come out of here by just turning it. We unhooked the connecting pin, we took this ring off, we unhooked the paint supply hose. This is the lower assembly, this is the guts of the pump right here. Now there's a ball, like I said, there's a ball in here. If this ball is stuck, you won't hear this rattle. I don't know if you can hear it on the video, but you'll be able to hear the ball loosen and rattling in there. If you don't hear that, the ball's stuck. To show you where the ball is, this is a packing retaining nut. And again, you need to knock this loose. Normally this is, again, you only hand tighten this, but once this thing's used, it pressurizes itself and it'll get pretty tight on that. So we just don't want to pull that too hard or damage that too hard. So you just want to put a wrench on there or knock it loose with a screwdriver, or however you can do it. You can put it into a vise, but you need to take this packing nut off. I think what we're going to do is we're going to use a vise grip and just gently pull this thing off. Putting the vise grip on this packing nut, we're just going to turn it loose. It comes loose very easily. A couple of pieces here. There's an O-ring. You want to make sure that stays on there. There's a plastic dirt cap at the top, and that keeps the dust and debris from going down into your packings. This holds the upper packings into in the cylinder. The lower packings are connected to this rod, which I'll show you in a minute. Now, because this is new, hasn't run very much, we're going to knock this out with a hammer, and just enough to get it through the cylinder, so that we're not damaging the packings that are in there. Let's see, find the hammer. And again, you don't want to hit it too hard with the hammer because you don't want to peen the top of this rod. So you just gently tap it, and it should fall apart. We're going to remove this cylinder, or this piston from the cylinder. And on this piston, you'll see a series of packings. This keeps pressure in the cylinder from below. Those packings, if they're damaged, or have a cut, or are squashed, or smashed, or any way damaged at all, they should be replaced. for this video and for this purpose of a quick troubleshooting, what we're looking for here is this is the upper ball, and you want to make sure that that's clear, that moves back and forth. If there's material in there or it's stuck in there and there's some dirt or something in there preventing that ball from moving, it's not going to siphon paint. So what we want to do is make sure that that's clear. Just put a small wire in there, run some water through it, some pressure in there, some air, something to blow that loose so the ball moves and returns to its seat. And that's pretty much it. Okay. Reassembly is simply putting your finger here to make sure that you don't disturb the upper packings, that they would fall out. Insert this through the bottom. Always go through the bottom with the packings. Push it into about, just so you get a little bit of a pressure. Now we want to take that packing nut that we had earlier. Simply hand tighten it. Just barely tighten it, because we don't want to get it too tight that we can't get this back up into the cylinder. And when you tighten this, it actually expands these packings in the top. And if you expand these packings too much and tighten down on this too much right away, you won't be able to get the cylinder back, or the rod back in there. And then what we want to do is just take a hammer, slightly tap it to get the piston back into the original position so that you can reassemble it. Now remember, we ran this down to the bottom of the stroke, so this piston will be almost bottomed out. Now there you see it bottomed out, but we want to push it in just a hair, about 1/8 of an inch. We can do that with a socket or something, just to put it inside here to knock that up there a little bit. So where that should be. Now the pump will correct itself when you tighten this down and put this back together, because of the connecting rod being at the bottom of the stroke. It will, when you put this back together, it will correct itself as far as where the length of this rod would be inside the cylinder. Now we're going to reassemble it. Again, opposite of what we did. Just going to screw this back in until we match the hole. The piston to the connecting rod. And we'd be able to put our pin inside there. So where that is should be lined up right there. All right, we're going to adjust this spring so we can get our pin in there. The pin will just go in there. Pull the spring down over top of the pin, and that keeps it in place. Now you can adjust the inlet or the outlet connector to where the hose was, and it's usually right around the back. You can just turn this to adjust it to where you need to be. Reconnect this. Nice and tight. Second step is to take your knurled ring, and again, that doesn't have to be too tight. Just hit it with a hammer. Make sure your packing nut's tight. That can be done with just a screwdriver. You don't want to make it too tight, just. Now if you would notice some material leaking up through the top, you just want to, again, put a hammer in this little opening or a screwdriver and tap it to tighten your packing nut. That swells the packings inside the upper part of the cylinder to keep the paint from leaking out of the top. Wrap this thing up. You just want to put your lower assembly and put the lower assembly back on. Again, we want to make sure all these three pieces are in the lower assembly cup. Got your ball seat, ball, and a ball cage. Once those things are in there, this thing's complete. And it's a matter of threading it back onto the lower assembly. This can all be hand tightened. No need to put a wrench on there. Hand tighten, we should be ready to go.